Chapter 13 was titled as Kshetragnya Vibhaga Yoga. And Kshetra and Kshetragnya, field and the knower of the field. Prabhupada translates the title to be nature, the enjoyer and consciousness, because that is essentially the essence of this 13th chapter. And Arjuna asks 6 questions, which is what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragnya, what is Prakriti, who is Purusha, what is Jnana, and what is Jnana. So, who is the field or who is this body? Who is the knower of the body? Who is Prakriti or what is Prakriti? Who is Purusha? What is knowledge? And what is the object of knowledge? So, Kshetra means we are this body. And we are occupying this body. So, who is the knower of the body? The I that we talk about is actually the soul. So both the soul and the super soul are the knower of this body, or the knowers of this body, with a significant difference. The super soul knows everybody. The soul only knows itself at best. Prakriti is material nature, which is, we've understood from a previous chapter that it is the inferior energy of the Lord, with which the Jivatma comes in contact. And Purusha is the enjoyer. So the Jivatma is always trying its best to, in its interactions with Prakriti, to figure out how to enjoy itself, using whatever resources is provided by Prakriti, under the influence of the 3 gunas. But the Lord says He is the supreme enjoyer, and this is something that the Jivatma tends to forget when it is separated from the Lord. And therefore, it comes under the control of Mayadi. So, the Param Purusha is Lord Krishna. He is the ultimate enjoyer. He has said that He is the enjoyer of all of your sacrifices, all of your yajnas, all of your austerities. And if everybody understands this, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Krishna says, the world will be peaceful. Then Jnana, which is what is the process to acquire this knowledge? And Jnaya, what should be the object of our knowledge? The entire object of our knowledge is Krishna. What is it that we should know to lead a peaceful life? As long as we are occupying this body, how do we lead a anxiety-free existence in connection with Krishna? So these are the 6 main topics of chapter 13. And then Krishna defines knowledge by talking about the 20 qualities of his devotees. And he says outside of these 20 qualities, anything else outside of that, he says is ignorance. So we discussed that the first quality Krishna talks about is humility. But what is humility? His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, who was a disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, defines humility as follows. Humility does not mean to think less of oneself. it means to think of oneself less. So I'll repeat, humility does not mean to think less of oneself. It means to think of oneself less. You may think, what is this wordplay? So it does not mean to think less of oneself. In the sense, humility does not mean you have an inferiority complex. Humility simply means you're not self-centered. So there is a difference between thinking, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, and thinking that is humility. That is just an inferiority complex. But not being self-centered, the reduction of the importance of I, that is humility, which is, what was the word that we talked about? The single word for humility? Amanitvam, right? Understanding that I am not the doer. That is humility. In the sense, anything good that happens in your life, you give credit to Guru and Krishna. Anything negative that happens in your life, you take full credit for it. That is humility. That is humility. That if anything positive happens in your life, you automatically assume that's just the grace and mercy of the Lord, nothing else. That it is just the grace and mercy of Guru and other Vaishnavas. The fact that you've come into Krishna consciousness, and if you see it as a positive outcome, you don't take credit for it. You didn't do anything. As we were discussing yesterday, right? Krishna comes knocking on your door so many times, and you keep shutting the door on him. Until one day, for whatever reason, you wake up, or somebody wakes you up. So that is humility. So it's not an inferiority complex. It is just less self-centeredness. That is humility. But the most important quality among those 20 qualities that we focus on is unalloyed devotion to Krishna. Krishna himself says his devotees are always, they're always thinking about him. And one of the essential qualities of his devotees, Krishna says, such devotees know that they need to be under the guidance of a spiritual master. And therefore they accept a spiritual master and begin to perform their sadhana under the guidance of a spiritual master. So there are three types of gurus. You have the Chaitya Guru, which is the Paramatma residing within you, coaxing you, your sense of conscience. Then you have the Shiksha Guru, and you'll have many, many Shiksha Gurus. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's one Brahmana who accepts lessons from all of the other Jivatmas, not human beings. Like what's the lesson he learns from the snake? What is the lesson he learns from the owl? What is the lesson he learns from various beasts, plants? So he has 24 gurus from whom he learns what he should do and what he should not do. So even other Jivatmas can be your guru just through the process of observation. What to speak of human beings as gurus. Many such Shiksha Gurus will come into your life. And then your eternal Guru, whom you're always connected with, which is your Diksha Guru. So that is an eternal connection that is never broken. So if ever you had to take birth again, then you're forcing your Diksha Guru to also take birth to come and save you again. So that is the seriousness with which we should accept a Diksha Guru. That we don't want our Guru to come back again. We want to perfect our lives in this one life, dedicate ourselves to Krishna, so that your spiritual master doesn't have to physically come again to save you in your next life. Actually, one of Prabhupada's disciples told Prabhupada, he told Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I want to serve you life after life. Now, you think that's such a wonderful thought process. Prabhupada promptly chastised his disciple. He says, why do you want me to come back again and again to save you? So you see how spiritual master is always chastising you. And their role is to chastise you so that your ego doesn't keep surfacing up. Guru means submissiveness. That's the first quality that is extracted by the Guru from you. Submissiveness. Don't think too highly of yourself. Don't think of yourself of anything at all. Less I, more Guru. That is an exemplary disciple. He's always meditating on what can I do for my Guru? How can I serve him? How can I perfect my service so that he may be pleased? So the only meditation for a student is, how can I perfect my duties to please my Guru? Nothing else. Not that, is Guru noticing me? Is Guru going to praise me? Is Guru going to give me the seva that I want, that I desire? No. Whatever seva the Guru assigns you, you accept it with humility. And you try to do it with perfection. It reminds me of a pastime of Ramanujacharya with his disciple. One day Ramanujacharya was visiting a holy place, and they were getting ready to leave after they had done their pilgrimage. And Ramanujacharya instructed his disciple to pack all the things up in a little box. And Ramanujacharya would travel with his deities so that he could always worship them. And so this disciple, what does he do? He packs the deities very nicely, and along with that, he puts one of Ramanujacharya's padukas in there, along with the deities. Imagine. Immediately you and I are thinking, my God, imagine putting our own slippers or somebody else's slippers with the deities, packing it together. So when Ramanujacharya discovers this, of course he's chastised his disciple. He said, what is this? You don't even have sense. You've put my padukas with my deities that I worship. How could you commit such an offense? Ramanujacharya's heart was breaking because the padukas that he was using on his feet was residing very nicely, comfortably next to the deities of the Lord that he is worshipping. So when he chastises his disciple this way, his disciple tells him, the deities that you're worshipping, they are your master. For me, my master, my deity is your padukas. Therefore, for me, the deities are not important. Your padukas are like my deities. You see the mood of the disciple? For me, your lotus feet is everything. I don't know God. I don't know Krishna. Actually, Prabhupada has also made this statement many times, many times. And that tells you how pure such devotees are and how exalted such devotees are, why they are considered acharyas. Imagine, Prabhupada has written 80 books, 80 books, established 108 temples around the world. Established, he himself established. Every day in the morning he would give Bhagavatam class, in the evening he would give Bhagavad Gita class. Constantly talking about Krishna. But such a humble soul, he would say, I don't know Krishna. And then he would say, I only know the instructions of my Guru, and I've tried my best to execute the instructions given to me by my Guru. He would say, I don't know Krishna. Imagine an Acharya talking about Krishna, thinking about Krishna constantly every day of his life, saying, I don't know Krishna. I only know the instructions given to me by my Guru, and I've tried my best to execute those instructions. So really, this is humility in service of Guru. This is how you come to that platform where others see you as being humble. Of course, you cannot say I am humble, right? The minute you say those words out of your mouth, obviously you're not humble. So one cannot stake claim to humility on one's own. Somebody else has to give you that certification. So then we discussed about, how Krishna was talking about the aspects of the universe, analysis of the universe, analysis of ourself, and then analysis of the nature of the Lord. So what are the attributes of the soul, attributes of the super soul, the difference between the two. And then Krishna also talks about the qualities of a jiva, the qualities of prakriti, the qualities of a super soul. And then what is this jnana chakshu? What is that divine knowledge? Who's this realized jiva and what is their final destination? So even though this particular chapter is about the 6 main topics, Krishna will keep coming back to his devotees and back to Bhakti Yoga. Even though these chapters that we discussed is more about Sankhya Yoga, it's more about material nature. Very deftly, Krishna will come back to the topic of Bhakti Yoga, clearly indicating his preference for Bhakti Yoga and clearly glorifying his devotees. So he doesn't stop even in these chapters. He keeps coming back to these topics. So this is chapter 13. The single word summary we discussed is, because you are in this material prison, you need a lawyer to get you out of this prison. And that lawyer for you is Paramatma. So that was the single word summary for chapter 13. So let's look at chapter 14. The title of chapter 14 is Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Guna and Traya, 3 gunas. So these are the 3 modes of material nature. It's a very interesting chapter and a lot to learn and apply. This chapter is a chapter for application for us. After learning the knowledge, of course. So remember, after all, this entire section is Sankhya Yoga, which means we have to learn about Prakriti, how Prakriti influences us, understand the potential challenges we may face as we interact with Prakriti, and use this knowledge that Krishna is giving us to come to the platform of Shuddha Sattva or Vishuddha Sattva state. So before we begin, let's offer our humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You see this diagram of the three gunas controlling you like puppets. How can you avoid this being controlled by the puppeteer of these three gunas? That is going to be the essence of today's chapter. So Bhagavad Gita has 700 shlokas. Of the 700 shlokas, 100 shlokas are about gunas, telling you how important it is for us to understand these three gunas and how they trap you. So the acronym for today is trap. And how do you transcend this trap is what we're going to understand today. So the three modes, how the three modes are constantly competing with each other to influence you. There's a constant race between Rajagun, Tamogun, and Sattvagun. Constant. What are the actions we tend to perform under the influence of these three modes? And finally, Krishna will come to the topic of to transcend even Sattvagun and come to the platform of pure Shuddha Sattva state. So let's look at the shlokas now. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati rajah karmani bharata jnanamavritya tuttamaha pramade sanjatyat uta. O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruit of action, and ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness. So Krishna explains that there are three gunas that we all come under the influence of. Sattvagun is the mode of goodness, and Krishna is saying people who are predominantly under the influence of the mode of goodness are always self-satisfied, they are happy. Whereas people who are predominantly under the influence of the Rajagun, they're always engaged in activities. They're always running around here, there. What should I do next? What should I do next? What should I do next? So this is called the mode of passion. And then Tamoguna, what happens, the outcome of Tamoguna is we are essentially ignorant, and it also binds one to madness because you've lost all sense of knowledge, all sense of what is right and wrong. Now, I have a question for you. Are all three gunas necessary for us in life, for us to lead a good life? Are they essential? Are all three gunas essential for us?
Yes,
Yes,
Mother.
on the material plane it is necessary.
Okay, so tell me, how is Tamoguna important for us? What role does it play?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
It helps in approaching a guru.
Tamoguna?
When we don't know what to do, we seek the superior authority, Mataji. So in that way, I meant.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Tamoguna actually exposes our weaknesses, and through perpetual exertion for enjoyment of material So that gives us a chance to understand the futility of our weaknesses.
Okay. Why is Rajaguna important? Or how does it play out?
It helps in to drive us ourselves to overcome all our weaknesses. It's the passion to go to higher planes of existence.
Okay. And how is Sattvagun important?
Sattva helps us in handling our disappointments with equanimity and surrender to the Lord.
Okay. So let's just look at the why Krishna is saying, if you're predominantly under the influence of Tamogun, you should try and come to the Rajagun stage at least. If you're predominantly under the influence of Rajagun, you should try to be predominantly under the influence of Sattvagun. And then finally, he says, even Sattvagun you have to transcend, because Sattvagun also makes you complacent. If you're enjoying yourself wherever you are, you will not strive for the spiritual path. So the seed verse for this, the latter 6 chapters is actually in Shloka 22 of chapter 13. So we'll just quickly look at Shloka 22 and actually even 21 and 22. So let's look at these two. So in the previous chapter, Krishna has said, nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. And then this is the seed shloka for the last section of the Bhagavad Gita. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. So, in essence, Krishna is saying, the Purusha Prakrita Stohi, which means the soul, when it becomes situated in Prakriti, it begins to desire to enjoy the products of Prakriti. And through this, it comes in contact with dualities of good and bad. Across species, it's not just human beings. It includes other Jivatmas. So, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he's a wonderful preacher in ISKCON, very, very erudite and able to really distill the essential philosophy into sentences which is easy to understand for us. So he was explaining how, let us say you're a child sitting on your mother's lap and you're watching a horror movie. And as you're watching the horror movie, the child is going to experience all of the emotions, the fear, the anxiety, as it is watching this movie. So similarly, the soul, when it comes into contact with material nature, it is playing out for itself this horror movie. Due to the consciousness coming into contact with Prakriti. And then Krishna says, what is the reason that the soul experiences this horror movie playing out? Karanam guna sangasya. Meaning, the reason for this is the consciousness is interacting with these 3 gunas. And through these 3 gunas, the movie is playing out on the screen. Because of the consciousness's interaction and coming under the influence of these 3 gunas. So what are these three gunas is what is described in chapter 14. So if you look at a tree that originates from a seed, how is that seed nourished? By these three modes of nature, and how it eventually becomes the source of bondage for us. So there is a wonderful photograph that is here, I think. Here it is. So you can look at the three modes in the context of the movie, pixels, colors, three colors. How a permutation and combination of these three colors can give you various experiences. So you can combine these three colors in various degrees, and you can create unlimited colors, an unlimited number of movies using that same analogy. So similarly, the three modes of nature, they are combining in various ways to create various illusions to captivate us. Hence the word Maya is used. That which is not. It's an illusion. We come under the trap of illusion because of the influence of these three gunas. And Krishna explains in this chapter that these three gunas are so subtle. How they influence our behavior. They influence every aspect of everything that we do, our physical practices, our mental state of mind, our emotions. So another meaning of the word guna is rope. So it's like multiple strands of this rope within each of the gunas tightly intertwining with each other and shackling you. They're constantly pulling you in different directions, even against our own better judgment. So it's like a compelling force. You're not able to overcome it. But Krishna also tells you, always is giving you the solution. He's going to tell you how you can do that. So, and Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was explaining that when you visit a doctor and he prescribes medicine for you, although we discussed earlier, you really don't need to know how the medicine works. It just works. You just have to have faith. However, because we have intelligence, we may have a tendency to question the efficacy of the medicine or the importance of adhering strictly to the prescriptions given by the doctor. So let us say we can use, and Prabhu was using two analogies. Let us say you've gone to the doctor and you have an ailment and he's given you multiple prescriptions. A smart doctor, a good doctor, will spend time explaining to you what each medicine does and why it is important. And he will also warn you and tell you that, certain medicines you may choose to skip or you may forget to take, but there is one particular medicine you should not forget, and he will explain to you why you should not forget to have that medicine and what could be the consequences of not having that medicine. So similarly, if you go to a physiotherapist, if you have an injury, he will advise you to do a whole lot of exercises. Now, being lazy and being busy or whatever reason, when we come home, generally we don't do all of the exercises that was recommended by the physiotherapist. So again, a smart physiotherapist will tell you, out of the 8 exercises that I have given you, please make sure you do these 2 or 3, because if you don't do it, your ailment will continue. Which means when you have a little bit of knowledge about the importance of your practices, you're more likely to adhere to those practices. So similarly, Krishna is giving you the knowledge about how these 3 gunas are constantly influencing you. Therefore, you use that knowledge to figure out how to overcome their influence, or at a minimum, how to reduce coming under their control. So this is the Sankhya Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is enumerating in detail how Prakriti interacts with you, how Jivatma interacts with Prakriti, and how to come out from the influence of these three gunas. So we said that Prakriti is a prison house, but this is a wonderful prison house that does not have any prison bars. You are not chained or shackled to anything. But then the prison bar for us is these three bars. So the single word summary for today's chapter is bars, as in prison bars. The only thing preventing you from going back to Krishna are these three bars: Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamo. So essentially, Krishna is saying, you take shelter of the knowledge that I'm giving you and use the intelligence that I've given you to apply that knowledge in how you practice your living. So that you're not in an agitated state of mind. You are not unduly stressed out. You're able to keep things in perspective. And you are self-satisfied. That is the ultimate goal. Right? So Krishna will conclude this chapter by saying, if you transcend these three gunas, then you break the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. So at the very end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna concludes in chapter 18. He says, everything that I've spoken about, just set it aside. Forget religion. Krishna says, just take shelter of me. If you simply take shelter of me, I'll take care of you. But then the problem for the Jivatma is that we may not be ready to do that. We may not be ready to surrender to Krishna. We may not be ready to take shelter. Therefore, Krishna very cleverly, again and again and again, talks about, if knowledge is what ultimately will influence you, then take the shelter of the knowledge that I'm giving. And by applying this knowledge that I'm giving you, ultimately you will come to realization that you need to take my shelter. You need to surrender to me. But at least initially, can you apply this knowledge that I'm about to give you in your life so that the quality of your life improves at a minimum. So by taking shelter of this knowledge, maybe we'll feel inspired to take shelter of Krishna. So repeatedly, Krishna uses this principle throughout the Bhagavad Gita. He keeps giving you more and more knowledge so that you can have practical applications. And eventually your conviction through practice is going to grow. Yeah. Sometimes you don't have to comprehend. Sometimes you may just have to follow the instructions. Comprehension may come a little later, interesting, through practice. But knowledge begins by just simply remembering the instruction. Remembrance alone is a good thing. So on the path of bhakti, we cannot either underestimate or overestimate the importance of knowledge. There's a fine balance there. So how does the soul come into Prakriti? Krishna explains in this chapter that he is the seed-giving father. And nature is also his energy. So if Krishna is our father and nature is our mother, then obviously we're going to have characteristics of both, correct? Just like in material life, you gain some qualities from your father, you gain some qualities from your mother. Since Krishna represents the spiritual and Prakriti represents material, it is not surprising that every Jivatma is going to exhibit both qualities, both from their father and the mother. But then, because Prakriti is temporary, we shouldn't get caught up with the temporary. So we said, the ropes are like these primary colors. You have n number of combinations. And the intertwining of these three gunas, see, you're not always in a single lane. Sometimes you're under the influence of Sattva-gun, sometimes under Rajagun, sometimes under Tamogun. So you're constantly switching lanes actually. But the problem is, once you're in one lane, you are compelled to follow in that lane only. It's not that easy to switch over to another lane unless you're really self-observant. So we'll talk about why self-observance is important for you to conquer the influence of the gunas. The qualities that affect every aspect of our lives, our character, our behavior, what is our vision in life, what is our view in life, what is our philosophy in life, how does this impact at all kinds of levels? Our physical well-being, our mental status, our emotional well-being, all of this is being influenced constantly by these three gunas. So we'll just briefly go over some examples. So what does Krishna do? Krishna first explains analytically these three gunas. And then he talks about how these three gunas impact you and the kind of work that you do. So generally speaking, those who are predominantly under the influence of Sattva-gun are attracted to non-fiction. Biographies, motivational books, scriptures, etc. Those who are in the mode of passion, right? They are inspired by fiction, thriller novels. What happens next? Those who are in the mode of ignorance are attracted to objectionable content. Now, don't feel bad by looking at the next row because we have to learn how to survive. But generally, people who are in the mode of goodness prefer to be in occupations that engender further goodness. So teaching is one such profession. Those who are in the mode of passion are chasing money. Money is honey. Whatever gives you more money, you're chasing that. So some of us, I actually noticed this in the corporate world among the youngsters, they're always jumping from company to company after 1 year, 1.5 years, because they're gunning for money. Nothing wrong with that. You have to take care of yourself and your family. But it's just they're not dedicated. Money is what actually is attractive to them. And people, the kind of work that you do in the mode of ignorance, you may be involved in selling drugs, selling alcohol, selling meat, or engaging in activities like that. For people in the mode of goodness, they tend to be morning creatures. They naturally wake up early before the Rajagun starts. Rajagun starts at noon when the sun is right over your head. People who are predominantly under the mode of ignorance, they are the night owls. They sleep during the day and they stay awake during the night. So if you're not getting too much sleep, and if you're not able to sleep easily, it's a sure sign that you're predominantly under the influence of Tamogun. So sleep disturbances are attributed to tamogun. What kind of music? Classical music, soft music that doesn't agitate your mind. For those who are under the influence of sattva-gun. Music that falls under the category of passion is, very loud, or something that is really makes you jump around, hop around. Jazz, rock, and pop music. Prabhupada was very, very strict about how we dance. So obviously, even in ISKCON, you would have seen that devotees dance. Prabhupada was very, very careful. Of course, nowadays, youngsters do whatever they want. But when Prabhupada was there, he made a very important statement. We don't dance to please ourselves. We should dance in such a way that Krishna is pleased with your dancing. We don't dance to show off our moves. Isn't that a wonderful way of looking at it? In the temple, when we dance, we are dancing to please Krishna. Therefore, you don't dance any which way you want. So usually gentle movements, slow movements. Of course, when you're in ecstasy, you may be jumping up and down. That's okay. You do see that in the temple. But Prabhupada was very clear. We are dancing to please Krishna. Remember, everything we do, we are doing it to please Krishna. We are not dancing to show off our moves, and we are not dancing to enjoy ourselves. So, of course, music in the mode of ignorance may be a little bit more jarring to accept. Now, another set of things that you can look at for yourself. Places of goodness, our Shastras say, are actually forests and a lot of greenery. It keeps you in the mode of under the influence of sattva. City life is definitely rajasic. Definitely rajasic, because it's running to do things. You see how we always feel like we don't have time for anything? That is city life. City life is very draining on your energy levels, because you're always running here and there. Of course, within city life, you have pubs and nightclubs. So there are some people who choose to hang out there. Kinds of food. If you're in the mode of goodness, you generally prefer to have vegetarian food that is wholesome, juicy, nourishing. Those who like very spicy, very sour, hot meaning temperature hot, and pungent foods are predominantly under the influence of Rajagun. And then, of course, foods falling under the mode of ignorance are dead things, dead animals, things that are rotting, decaying. So even vegetarian food that is decaying and being eaten is in the mode of tamogun. Like day-old pizza, day-old rice, like that. If you're eating food that is, more than 3 hours old after it has been cooked and offered, that is considered poisonous for your body. The Shastras say that once you cook the food and offer it to the Lord, you should eat it very quickly. But today, what do? We put it in the refrigerator and eat it over 1 week's period of time. Of course, prasadam will always be prasadam, but the best thing for your body is to cook your foods fresh. As a matter of fact, as per Ayurveda, you should even pluck the vegetables freshly. But today we don't even do that. Vegetables are frozen and put in the fridge, and then we take it out. But in the olden days, your grandparents used to purchase vegetables every day, and they would make that fresh every day. So Preferably, if you want to be in the mode of goodness, some practices like this on the food habit side. State of mind, for those who are under the mode of goodness, as I mentioned, they are generally happy people, generally positive in nature. They do stay in touch with some kind of knowledge. People under the mode of Rajagun, they become very agitated easily because they're always chasing things. They're driven by greed. I want more, 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 you know. Whether it is more food, more wealth, more houses, more enjoyment, more vacations, more of everything, more clothes, more jewelry. They're not happy with whatever they have. They're not content, let me put it that way. People in Sattvagun, their state of mind is they're content. Whatever I have is enough. Whatever Krishna has given me, I'm happy with it. I am not going to overextend myself trying to chase things that are only going to agitate my mind. People under the mode of goodness, they have a tendency to be quite lazy. They are dull, slow moving. They're very reluctant to even talk about spirituality, let alone try to accept spirituality. So now this is interesting. We all think being in the mode of goodness is the best. Of course, it's the best. It's better than being in the mode of passion, better than being in the mode of ignorance. But even being in the mode of goodness, you are so self-satisfied, you don't have the need for God in your life. So we were talking, right? Several times we said, these are the people who focus on philanthropy, doing good to others, being compassionate to other jivatmas, but without God in the picture. They're not attached to their wealth. They do a lot of charitable work, but still, if they are separated from Krishna, it is not good. They're depositing a lot of punya in their karma tank. So you're so self-satisfied, you don't have the need for God in your life. And that is dangerous. Whereas the people who are under the influence of passion, their desires speak so loudly, they cannot hear Paramatma within them. And of course, those who are ignorant forget about hearing. They are too busy with other things. They're too mad to even hear. So Krishna says in Shloka 13 that there is a constant race for prominence, which means that these gunas are always competing with each other to dominate you. Let's read that Shloka 13. Was it Shloka 13 or what was it? 10 to 13. Okay. The race for prominence here. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharata. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. So Krishna is telling us that it's very difficult to stay in one lane all the time. But there is a start and stop for that lane, and then something else may come up as a desire, and then you'll switch lanes at that time. So like this, there is a race for prominence. Rajas tamas chabibhuya sattvam bhavati bharata rajas sattvam tamas chaiva tamas sattvam rajastata. The shloka that the translation that we just read. So in this podium, there is always shifting of places among these gunas. They're taking turns to influence you. So when goodness dominates, what happens? You're generally in a happy state of mind, you're content, you have a good sense of what is right and wrong. You avoid modes of passion and mode of ignorance. Passion, you're always chasing things. Ignorance is essentially practicing indolence. Overeating falls under the mode of ignorance. I don't know, somebody picked up the Lord of the Rings, showed, I don't know, what is this character's name? I have no idea. But anyway, mode of happiness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Then Krishna says, Urdvam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya gunavrittista ado gachanti tamasaha. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to hellish worlds. So Krishna is talking about the gradations of consciousness here. So if your consciousness keeps degrading, then there are two outcomes. If your consciousness degrades to the mode of ignorance, two outcomes. Either you have to go to the lower planetary systems, or you have to occupy lower species among that 8.4 million bodies that Krishna has made available to us to accept any one of them. So, mode of goodness takes you to upper planetary systems. In upper planetary systems also there is birth and death. Mode of goodness means you're constantly striving to achieve something or the other. Therefore, you come to the middle planetary systems, the mode of passion. If you're predominantly under the influence of ignorance, then you have to go down lower to the hellish planets, Krishna says. Or he also says later on that you can occupy lower species also. So to quickly summarize, when you're under the mode of goodness, you're generally happy. You have good sense of what's right and wrong. And generally you're free from sin. Generally you're free from sin. In the mode of passion, you have unlimited desires and longings, and that can constantly trap you. So you'll have both a combination of papa and punya. Whereas under the mode of ignorance, it's predominantly papa. Badness, indolence, sleep. Then Krishna uses an interesting analogy. He says, if the gates of the body are eliminated by knowledge, then you're in the mode of goodness. And I'll just explain how Chaitanya Charan Prabhu actually explains this with a beautiful analogy. If you're under the mode of passion, then you're attached to things, family, country, nation, caste, religion. You are very, very driven by designations. I am male, I am female, I am rich, I am poor, I am Brahmana, I am Kshatriya, I am Vaishya, I am Telugu, I am Tamil. You know, you're very attached to designations. Whereas if you're in the mode of goodness, and if your body is illumined by knowledge, then the designations no longer matter to you, because you're treating everybody equally. So in the mode of passion, you have an uncontrollable desire to just chase things. One desire after another, one desire after another. Remember, Krishna says desires are like rivers flowing to the ocean. So you're constantly responding to desires. And darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion, if you're under the tamogun. The destination also Krishna is giving you. If you're predominantly under the mode of goodness, you go to higher planetary systems. He doesn't say you go to the spiritual world. If you're predominantly under the mode of passion and you have endless desires, you have to keep taking birth again and again to fulfill those desires. You don't have a choice. So desirelessness means to serve Krishna, to serve Guru. That is desirelessness, definition of desirelessness. So your only desire to serve should be to serve Krishna, and that is desirelessness that will allow you to transcend even the sattva guna stage. So after death, if you're in the mode of ignorance, you will have to go to the animal kingdom or lower planets. So now Krishna will talk about actions. Gunanetan atityat atityatrein dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityujjara dukkhair vimuktom mritamashnyute. Krishna says, when the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So Krishna is saying, you can create Vaikuntha for yourself here itself, simply by transcending the three modes. So now he has said, you should transcend the three modes as long as you are occupying this body. Of course, this is applicable predominantly to always to human beings, right? Because you can use your intelligence to overcome the three modes. If you're in an animal body, you can't do anything. You're predominantly in that mode only. Generally, trees, plants, etc. are considered to be in the mode of ignorance. The non-moving objects, generally speaking. And most animals and beasts are under the mode of Rajoguna. And human beings who are practicing Krishna consciousness, or at least at a minimum practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga, they are under the mode of Sattva. Which means if you're not practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, you have to consider yourself an animal. That's what our Shastras say. You are nothing but a two-legged animal, far more intelligent, but just trying to make things more and more convenient for yourself. So Krishna is finally coming to the point. He's saying, you should transcend the three modes. If you do that, you can break the cycle of birth and death. If you do that, even now itself in this life, you can enjoy bliss. You don't have to wait to go to the planetary system, to the spiritual world to enjoy bliss. You can do it here and now. The choice is ours. So immediately after Krishna makes this statement, Arjuna has a question. So let's see, what was the shloka? 20. Now that Krishna has said, actually you can transcend these three gunas to break the cycle. So immediately Arjuna asks, oh my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the modes of nature? Three questions. What are the symptoms of that individual who has transcended these three modes? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the three modes? The rest of the chapter is Krishna's answer to these three questions. So the symptoms of one who has transcended, what is his behavior? How does he transcend? So this cartoon shows this person cutting off those puppet strings and being free of it. Symptoms of a person who is practicing transcendental spirituality. They are equipoised. They do not get rattled easily. They are neutral. They are indifferent to their pushings, not uninterested. There is a difference between being uninterested and disinterested. And Chaitanya Charan Prabhu actually used a wonderful analogy. He was talking about cricket umpires, right? The umpire has to be what do you call it? Uninterested in the sense that he cannot take sides. He doesn't have a vested interest in the outcome here. Disinterested means being impartial, being fair. So similarly, a person who has transcended these three gunas is compassionate, is fair. They are not sitting in judgment of others all the time, which is the tendency. Even in Sattva Gun, we sit in judgment of others. We think, I am so good. Thank God I am good. Look at the other person who is ignorant. So even in Sattva Gun, these thoughts come to you. Superiority complex is there in Sattva Gun, by the way. Superiority complex exists in Sattva Gun. So being neutral, being indifferent to different pushes that may come your way. The other symptom of that person who is in the Shuddha Sattva state is they're not hankering for praise, they're not hankering for fame, they're not hankering to be recognized. They are free from all hankerings. They're done. They're just happy. They're just blissful serving Krishna and Guru. They don't care about anything else. They don't care if somebody insults them. They don't care if somebody praises them. They don't respond to either. They just take it in stride and move along. Anusuyava, free from envy. They don't envy others. They don't envy Krishna. So Krishna responds to Arjuna's first question. What are the symptoms of the person who has transcended these three modes? Equipoised, neutral, free from hankering, free from envy. Now Krishna answers the second question. What's his conduct? How does he behave? He is steady in all circumstances, Krishna says. Whether it is praise or blame, he doesn't respond. Honor or dishonor, no impact. Happiness or distress, no impact. Desirable or undesirable experiences, no impact. He deals equally with everyone and everything. And Krishna uses an analogy. For him, when he sees the earth or the stone or gold, they're all the same because all of them are energies of the Lord. It's not that gold is more precious than stone or more precious than earth. Everything is the energy of the Lord, and therefore he does not draw any distinctions or discriminations. That doesn't mean he's not wise. He is wise. He will know how to use the earth properly, the stone properly, and gold properly. He doesn't have friends or enemies. Everybody is equal to him. He never acts on a whim. Thoughtfulness. He surrenders to Krishna, and if he ever has any doubt on what decision he needs to make, if he's in difficulty at all, he will approach Guru to get clarity. And he's determined, Krishna says, in his spiritual practice. See, again and again, Krishna comes back to bhakti, sadhana. Then Krishna talks about what is the process now. How do you reach that status of being in Shuddha Sattva state? Krishna again comes back to ABCD. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Krishna concludes by saying, only those who engage in devotional service without ever giving it up can transcend these three modes. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Brahman means self-realization. He understands himself in relation to Krishna and what is his duty. So the acronym today was TRAP. I have a few more points to cover, and then we'll wrap up the class. So we've discussed that these three modes are very, very subtle. It's not visible at all. So practically speaking, how can we apply this in our personal lives? So Krishna has given the characteristics of each of the modes. The characteristics of being in the mode of goodness is happiness, purity, charity. Characteristics of mode of passion, etc. The trick or the trap for us specifically with the mode of passion is as follows. I'm just summarizing some of the things that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has spoken about. So he says, imagine you have a TV and there are 100 channels to choose from. And when you have so many choices and you're overburdened with choices, you feel compelled to act on it simply because you have so many choices. But because there are so many choices, you foolishly think you have the freedom to choose. So he was giving this analogy of, trying to buy a car. An average salesman will ask you a question. Would you like to buy a car? But an expert salesman will approach you and say, I see you've been eyeing all these cars. Which one would you like to have? It's almost they have not given you a choice and the freedom to walk away and say, I don't want a car. Perhaps I don't need a car. But when you're given so many choices, you feel compelled to select one. And you think, oh, I have freedom. So this is the trap of that I have the freedom to choose. This is coming under the influence of Rajaguna. When you are bombarded with so much information, you feel compelled to respond to it. And by that compulsion, you end up losing your freedom. But you're foolishly thinking that you have freedom of choice. And then he says, the real way to understand, so he was saying how you can understand which mode is actually influencing you. So he talked about two things. He said, to overcome the three gunas, we need to do two things. One is self-discipline, the other is self-discovery. So please note this down, it is not there in the summary slide. We need self-discipline and we need self-discovery, which is what Krishna is saying, but not directly. Indirectly, in the shlokas, when Arjuna asked those three questions, indirectly, this is what Krishna has said, but Prabhuji has so wonderfully distilled what Krishna is saying. You need self-discipline and you need introspection, right? How do you discover yourself unless you're introspecting on what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Why are you constantly getting yourself into trouble? Why are you constantly anxious? Why are you so morose? Why do you feel so negative about life? Why do you feel that the whole world is against you? So Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was explaining the solution that Krishna is talking about is one is it begins with self-discipline, which is what am I going to do, irregardless of how I feel about it. Which is, and Prabhu was using a wonderful analogy, right? Self-discipline is understanding how the car should be driven. The best that we can. It's a skill. Whereas self-discovery is understanding that a BMW is not the same as a WagonR, is not the same as an Alto or whatever it is. Different cars have different features and different capabilities and different perfections in terms of functionality. This is self-discovery, understanding what type of car you are in and therefore how should it be driven. So what does this mean? Understanding what type of car you're in and therefore understanding how you should drive it. Which is, first of all, understanding which guna are you under the influence of. Which means self-discovery can only happen if you're dispassionately observing yourself, your actions, your attitude, your emotions, your behavior, your interactions with other human beings, the choices that you make. Unless you take the time to introspect and observe yourself, how will you be able to overcome the three modes? It will be impossible. The problem with the Rajaguna is that you're so busy acting. You're just busy, busy, busy. You don't take a step back and ask yourself, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Why am I constantly chasing things that are not really bringing me the ultimate happiness? So self-discovery means first understanding your own nature and then figuring out how to live with yourself. That's what Prabhu was saying. Once you understand yourself, you have to learn how to live with yourself. But through the practice of self-discipline, you can learn how to live with yourself a little bit better. You can't aim for perfection day one. It's just impossible for you to achieve perfection day one. So let's say, for example, you've come to these classes and Prabhupada, you've heard Prabhupada say, one must wake up early in the morning. And that is criteria for you to be a good practicing devotee. And one of the criteria to please Krishna is to wake up early in the morning, because Guru has said wake up early in the morning. Let us say you cannot wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning. Then obviously your goal cannot be 3 a.m. right away, right? So let's say today you wake up at 7 a.m. Then you shouldn't aspire to immediately to get to 3 a.m. If you can, fantastic. But that's not how your human mind works. So what should you do? Prabhu was saying, if you are only able to wake up at 7 a.m., slowly move the bar, try and wake up at 6 a.m. Then once you reach 6 a.m., then try to wake up at 5 a.m. Then you are giving yourself an opportunity to slowly improve and rectify the things that otherwise you feel like you are not in control of your own life. So he was saying the modes influence the moods within us, and we need to understand which mode is influencing us that causes all of our mood swings. So this requires self-observation. This requires time for you to understand who you are. If you don't understand who you are, how are you going to live with yourself? How are you going to figure out what is it that you need to improve? What is it that you need to change? So this is a simple solution for us. One is self-discipline. Two is self-discovery. Self-discipline could simply be simple sadhana practices. Chanting. You may not be able to chant 16 rounds day one, but can we at least try to chant one round to begin this process of transformation? Then increases to 4 rounds, then increase it to 8 rounds, then to 12, then to 16. And then Prabhupada says, I never told you to stop at 16. Minimum 16. After that, you keep chanting. So it begins with self-discipline, and through the process of self-discipline, you can also begin to observe yourself. It's the process of self-discovery, and that then helps you, your transformation. So practical ways in which you can come out from the influence of these three gunas. So there is a lot I can talk about this chapter. There's so much that you can try and extract from this one chapter of the three gunas, because fundamentally, this is our problem. This is if we keep reading this chapter and we arrive at the solution, then you can come to the Shuddha Sattva state. So Prabhuji was explaining how Krishna uses 3 words to describe the 3 gunas, 3 adjectives. So for goodness, Krishna uses the word prakasha. Prakasha means illuminated, knowledge. For passion, Krishna uses the word pravritti. And then for ignorance, Krishna uses the word moha. And then Prabhu translated this as follows. If you are under the mode of goodness, this is your tendency. You reflect and then act. Which means you think first, weigh the options and then act. But you will act. You will not decide not to act. A lot of us have a problem just making a decision and moving on. And Prabhu was explaining there is no guarantee in life. There's no guarantee of any particular outcome. So you are forced to act. So best is in the mode of goodness, you will reflect and then act. But when you're in the mode of action, you act first and then you reflect, oh, what did I do? Why did I get myself into trouble like this? So when you're in the mode of goodness, reflection first, action next. In the mode of passion, action first and then you're reflecting what is the outcome. When you're in the mode of ignorance, there is neither reflection nor action, just illusion. So there is neither self-discipline nor self-discovery. So this deeper understanding, it's essentially human psychology, right? Ultimately, this is human psychology. Knowing these things, one can come to the Shuddha Sattva state. But Krishna very nicely says at the end of this chapter, simply by practicing Bhakti Yoga, you can achieve the goal of coming to the Shuddha Sattva state. But some of it is the transformation happens from within because Lord Krishna is helping you personally, but some of it you have to act also. Especially if you're wavering from the path, you should bring yourself to the right path constantly. So this is the essence of this chapter 14, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. So we'll stop here.